Welcome, ladies, to our GCBI Bible study night. I'm so happy to see all of you guys tonight. If you haven't already, you are welcome to grab maybe some kind of hot beverage. Get comfortable and cozy because we are just casual here tonight and we are going to have some fun. So we are studying in Luke 8 verses 40 through 56, and it's the story of the bleeding woman, which you can also see in Matthew 9 and Mark 5 or 6-ish. And first I'm going to pray. So if you have your Bibles, turn to chapter 8 of Luke, verse 40. And let me just pray first. God, thank you so much for just the ability to stay connected and these women that we have been surrounded with. God, I thank you for the community and for just like-minded followers of you who want to learn about you and who are putting their trust and faith in you, God. I just ask that we can be an encouragement to one another tonight and that we can learn more of who you are, your character, and your goodness, and that you would reveal a little bit more of yourself to us through your word, God. And I just thank you for the opportunity to study your truth, and we love you so much. We thank you that we can find peace in the midst of all of the confusing circumstances right now. We love you and we praise you. Amen. So, we are looking at, like I said, it's the story of the woman who was bleeding for 12 years. And I'm just going to start by reading off the entire story, and then I will let you know what my musings are. So, let's get started. And as Jesus returned, the people welcomed him, for they had all been waiting for him. And there came a man named Jairus, and he was an official of the synagogue. And he fell at Jesus' feet and began to implore him to come to his house, for he had an only daughter about 12 years old, and she was dying. But as he went, the crowds were pressing against him. And a woman who had a hemorrhage for 12 years and could not be healed by anyone came up behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak. And immediately her hemorrhage stopped. And Jesus said, "Who is the one who touched me?" And while they were all denying it, Peter said, "Master, the people are crowding and pressing in on you." But Jesus said, "Someone did touch me, for I was aware that power had gone out of me." When the woman saw that she had not escaped notice, she came trembling and fell down before him and declared in the presence of all the people the reason why she had touched him and how she had been immediately healed. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." While he was still speaking, someone came from the house of the synagogue official, saying, "Your daughter has died. Do not trouble the teacher anymore." But when Jesus heard this, he answered him, "Do not be afraid any longer, only believe, and she will be made well." When he came to the house, he did not allow anyone to enter with him, except Peter and John and James, and the girl's father and mother. Now they were all weeping and lamenting for her. But he said, "Stop weeping, for she has not died, but is asleep." And they began laughing at him, knowing that she had died. He, however, took her by the hand and called, saying, "Child, arise." And her spirit returned, and she got up immediately. And he gave orders for something to be given her to eat. Her parents were amazed, but he instructed them to tell no one what had happened. And I think it's the version of Matthew at the end. It says that he told them not to tell anyone about it, and they went out and told everyone about it. So it's just kind of funny how the entire town and beyond knew what had just happened, and it was an incredible, miraculous event. And I truly, truly love this story. I think that it paints an incredible picture of who God is and that he is a master storyteller and how he weaves our stories and our circumstances together. And I think it shares about his intentionality and just that he is so purposeful in everything that he does. So we start with the story, seeing that first, there is a girl who's dying, and she's 12 years old, okay? Daughter, 12 years old, got it. Then we meet the woman who had a hemorrhage for how many years? 12 years. Coincidence? I don't think so. So we've got these two women, hello! We've got these two women who have 12 years ago, the same month, day, definitely the same year that this young girl was born and brought to life, this woman began suffering. And for 12 years, they've been on this trajectory, this parallel journey. Maybe they knew of each other, maybe they had no clue that the other one existed. But they were both on this trajectory, and God would eventually meet their stories for an incredible purpose. And I just love how cool it is. I have no better words for it than it's just cool. And we see that, first of all, I want to point out just how Jesus was on his way to heal this young girl. And, you know, I don't know, I get this picture of all of the men like coming up to him, and for me, I'd be like, oh yes, let us go and heal her, and they would whisk me away, and I would be so important. And I mean, that's not who Jesus is, obviously. And so he, in that moment, instead of just going to where the young girl was, he recognized that there was someone in the crowd that needed him in that moment. And he had felt the power go out, and instead of just rushing off and going to this young girl and leaving her to just be healed, he stopped. And I think he knew that there was more than physical healing that needed to happen. This is kind of a tangent that's happening right now in my mind. She needed emotional healing as well. And what I'm thinking is this woman had been a cast away, basically. I mean, you're unclean when you're bleeding, and so I would imagine that her friends had long abandoned her and left her, and her family was ashamed of her. She was lonely, and she had probably grieved and been angry and confused for every single day over the last 12 years. And I think that she prayed and prayed and prayed and didn't find any answer. And I think that she was just alone, and in that moment of her reaching out to him, he could have just left and she was healed. She got what she wanted, but he stopped everyone and everything and would not leave, refused to leave until she came out into the light and she confessed what had happened, and he was able to look at her in the eyes. A woman, especially someone who was bleeding and had that kind of a reputation of uncleanliness, and say, daughter, your faith has made you well. You are worthy and you are loved and you are a child of the Most High King. Like, what a beautiful moment that he made more important than anything that was going on in that moment. And I love that part of who Jesus is, and that really doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about tonight, but I just love that part. So moving on, we see that he is being whisked away to heal this young girl, but by prolonging arriving at her house and by having the conversation with the woman who was bleeding, he actually made way for an even more incredible miracle. At this point, he had healed many, many people, and I think it was just kind of a nonchalant thing, like, oh, Jesus, he heals people, that's who he is. And it would have been ordinary at this point. And instead, because Jesus doesn't go immediately to heal and speaks with the woman, the girl dies. And even in that time where there was probably not a doctor around, it was evident that she was dead. So I don't know how long it took him to get there, but there was no doubt about it that she was gone. And then an even greater miracle was able to be brought into the story, and God was able to say something more than just, I'm a healer. He was able to declare, I hold the power of life and death. And so I think about these two women who may not have known each other ever, and in the same moment that the girl was brought into this world, this woman was suffering. And for all of these years, not knowing the other led them to one specific day, one specific afternoon, one specific minute, where if Jesus hadn't been going to meet this young girl and her family where she was dying, he would have never crossed paths with the woman who was bleeding, and she would have never gotten her miracle. If he was never going to see the same little girl that was born about the same time that her suffering started, if he was never going in the first place, he would have probably never crossed paths with this woman. And because he did cross paths with this woman, and he stopped and looked at her and had a conversation with her, he was able to not only heal this child, but bring her back to life and bring so much glory to his name. The people around her, the witnesses that saw, all of the people who reported it in the town, they knew what a miracle had happened. And it was because of these two women and how God was intertwining their stories. And I just love that part of who he is, because he is in the details. He is in every single moment. And so often we just kind of brush things aside and we think that, oh, that was just coincidence, or that was just luck, or whatever it may be. And I don't think that's who God is. I think that he is just extraordinary in the way that he weaves our stories together. And I think everything has a purpose and a design. And that's what I want to talk about with all of you today. That's something that Liz and I have been talking about, of just why have we all been brought to GCBI for this specific year, for this specific season, with these specific people. God has something extraordinary for this time, and he wanted all of us to be a part of it. So what have we been learning from each other? I want you to think about the people that he's put around you, and this strange year that it has been, and the things that you have learned. And let's begin thinking about the purpose, the extraordinary purpose that God designed and planned for every single one of us to be here, and for us to learn some incredible things, not just from the instructors, but from each other, from doing life in community with one another. So that's all for this part. I hope that you enjoyed this. I totally took that from a sermon I heard from Michael Todd from Transformation Church. So that's not my revelation, that is his revelation. I thought it was appropriate for us, so I just want to give credit. And I love you guys, and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the study. And remember, women can do anything.